I have changed my mind on a lot of things recently, to be honest with you. But I would say the biggest thing would be the direction the left is going in with alleged criminal justice reform. And I say alleged because a lot of what I've seen them carry out wasn't really about reforming the system, meaning reforming the way we do policing and reforming our prison system. So it's more focused on rehabilitating people so we reduce recidivism. What I did see following the 2020, protests that summer was a more hands-off approach in regard to violent criminals that should absolutely be taken out of society because they pose a risk to public safety.
Do you see this anecdotally in your own life, like living here in Los Angeles?
I mean, I see it
anecdotally,
anecdotally, but I also see it in terms of the broader picture if you look at overall trends. So California has shut down, I believe, 2, and they're set to shut down their 3rd state prison. And I think there's a huge misconception, and I bought into this misconception that like everyone who's in prison is like low level drug possession, that's all they're in prison for. That's actually not the truth. The reality is when they shut down those prisons without no real plan in place, basically they assumed that those inmates would be taken in by county prisons, but the county prisons are too full. And so they're just releasing like violent offenders well before their sentence is over.
What percentage are violent offenders versus drug low-level crime?
So I don't have the exact percentages in front of me. I didn't even realize we were going to get into this conversation.
Yeah. Jack is skipping way ahead. Like we had this towards the bottom.
So if you are of the belief that the majority of people who are behind bars right now are simply there for drug possession and nothing more, you're just mistaken. Like that is a very tiny percentage. There's other crimes, might be robbery. A lot of violent crime is represented in the inmate population. And so that doesn't mean that I think they should be locked away for the rest of their lives, but I don't agree with just releasing them without them serving their sentence and without them getting any rehabilitation so they're no longer a risk to public safety. And so that's the issue that I've been having recently. I'll give you more specific examples of what I'm witnessing and what we're seeing, especially on the streets of like Los Angeles. I have no problem with legalizing drugs. You want to snort whatever you want to snort or smoke whatever you want to smoke, by all means do it. I don't think you should be allowed to just do it on our sidewalks. It's wild to me that we have stricter laws in place and we enforce stricter laws in regard to smoking cigarettes, but people can just, shoot up on the metro system or smoke fentanyl out in the open. And I think that's unacceptable. And I think that needs to stop. Like the whole point was to legalize and regulate. But what we're seeing in a lot of liberal cities across the country is the weakest way of responding to, the drug epidemic and the drug war, which was a failure. And it's a hands-off decriminalization approach. When you simply decriminalize, you just disempower the authorities to do anything in regard to drug crimes. When you legalize and regulate, you allow for, people who want to use recreationally to do so, but you can't be breaking other laws to get your fix, or you can't be, shooting up out in public in front of a school. That has led to a decay in Los Angeles that I think is pretty undeniable, and people want to deny it, but it's ridiculous. Like we all see it. Yeah. And it's not okay. It's not okay for kids to witness that. I remember growing up and hearing about what it was like in Compton or South Los Angeles and how, these kids had a really tough life because there was a drug dealer on the street corner, selling dope, and people, very clearly high out of their minds on the streets. And now we've just allowed that to spread all throughout Los Angeles County. And by the way, other cities, in this country. And I think it's a failing model. I think people need help. If they're addicted to drugs, I don't want to simply throw them in prison. I think that's the wrong response to it. But they need help. Rehabilitation is super expensive. And rather than focusing on offering rehabilitative services for people who are struggling with drug addiction, I feel like some of the policies we've implemented only help to continue their drug addiction because it's more about so-called harm reduction and preventing overdoses, which is important, but that's not really helping them out. I think there are a lot of people addicted to these hard drugs, certainly things like fentanyl, who want help, but they can't afford it. And I personally know people, you know, good friends of mine who have had family members just like die of overdoses, and they they just drained everything that they had in, you know, their assets, their bank accounts to get their loved ones the rehabilitative services they needed. And it's expensive, you know, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people are struggling with, and they're not getting the help that they need.